When Germany invaded Poland in September 1939, the German army used a revolutionary new tactic called blitzkrieg, or lightning war. Rather than move overland on foot, German troops used motor vehicles and tanks to advance deep into enemy territory before the defenses could react. They even used these Stuka aircraft to provide close ground support for themselves. Germany overran western Poland by the end of the month, and in mid-September, under terms of a non-aggression pact that had secretly been negotiated with Hitler, the Soviet leader Stalin invaded and captured eastern Poland. Just be sure you're aware, non-aggression pacts are basically treaties between nations that say you're not going to attack each other. Alright? Alright. For the next 6 months, the war kind of entered a quiet phase during which Germany massed troops and equipment along the Maginot Line. It's basically a massive system of fortifications along the border between France and Germany.
Okay. Your job this period?
Then in April 1940, Hitler invaded Denmark and Norway. In May, German troops maneuvered around the Maginot Line and rapidly advanced across Belgium, the Netherlands, and France. All three of these countries were soon overcome. British troops that had been sent into France to counter the initial German buildup now hastily retreated to the coastal city of Dunkirk on the English Channel. There, in an amazing operation over a 9-day period from late May into early June, nearly 340,000 English soldiers were successfully evacuated across the Channel to England by a 900-vessel fleet of mainly civilian tugboats, yachts, and other small craft. All this in spite of continual air attacks by the German Luftwaffe, basically their air force. In June 1940, German troops entered Paris and surrendered. An armistice between the two was concluded a week later. A new French government, called the Vichy government, was set up by Marshal Philippe Pétain. By terms of the armistice agreement, the Vichy government was given nominal sovereignty over the southeastern 2/5 of France, not yet occupied by German military forces, and it controlled most of the surviving French military forces. Never recognized by the Allies, Vichy was in fact under German control throughout its existence, and it eventually collapsed with the defeat of Germany in 1945. Meanwhile, in London, General Charles de Gaulle organized a resistant movement called the Free French. They rejected the Vichy government and did what they could to support the Allies throughout the war. They eventually formed the nucleus of the Fourth Republican government that was headed by de Gaulle after the war. In just 3 months, Hitler had conquered most of Western Europe, and German troops were massing along the coast opposite Britain, just 20 miles away across the English Channel. The threat of invasion was imminent. But Hitler first wanted to destroy the English will to resist, and to accomplish this, over the next year, he used his Luftwaffe, that's his air force, to launch against Britain the greatest air assault at that time that the world had ever known. In what has since been come to be known as the Battle of Britain, as many as 1,000 sorties a day were carried out by Luftwaffe bombers against targets throughout all of England at first, then later concentrated against London. To counter them, Royal Air Force pilots flying the famous Spitfire fighters often flew 6 and 7 missions a day, inflicting heavy losses on the attackers. Now, inspired by Prime Minister Winston Churchill, the British people, though, never lost their will to resist despite massive losses. By June of 1941, when Hitler finally ended the bombing campaign, more than 150,000 Londoners had been killed or injured. Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few, said Churchill in praise of the courageous performance of the Royal Air Force. In late 1940, Hitler sent General Erwin Rommel and his Afrika Korps into North Africa, where they had much early success in driving back the British and advancing into Egypt. For a year and a half after that, the North African campaign was a back-and-forth affair that really depended on which side was being better resupplied at the moment. In early 1941, both British and American intelligence began picking up information that Hitler was about to invade the Soviet Union in spite of the non-aggression pacts the Soviets and Germans had signed. Both governments informed the Soviets, but they chose to disregard the warnings. Then in June, Hitler launched a major invasion of the Soviet Union, forcing it to join forces with the Allies. Over the next 4 years, fighting along the Eastern Front in the Soviet Union would be some of the bloodiest the world had ever known. Altogether, there would be more than 25 million Soviet casualties and 5 million German casualties. Now, despite these events taking place in Europe, the majority of Americans wanted no part in the European conflict. President Franklin Roosevelt, however, re-elected for a third term in 1940, felt differently. As we've mentioned in previous lessons, he took many measures to prepare America for war and to gear up American military-industrial production to wartime levels. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on 7 December 1941 really stunned the American people and galvanized them into action. America was now ready to go to war. 3 days after the Japanese attack, Germany and Italy joined Japan in declaring war on the United States. The second of 2 world wars had come to America. A reorganization of Navy commands followed the Pearl Harbor attack and declarations of war. Admiral Ernest J. King became Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. fleet. He would also become the Chief of Naval Operations in March 1942. It was under his guidance that the United States would contribute to the defeat of Germany in the Atlantic and achieve victory over Japan in the Pacific.